In the previous session, Martin, you talked about how gene editing is safe and it has been applied in different parts of the world. But we know still that Africa is very, very reserved on those technologies. Stephen, do you have some experience from Africa and why Africa is not very receptive to something which would bring benefit?
Of all the people, Canisius, Africa should be very receptive to this technology. It is a technology that Africa, of all people, need. There is no meth-lethal necrosis in Europe. There is no striga in Europe. There's no forlamiworm in Argentina. And this technology has potential to control striga, this technology, and we have seen examples. We have made striga-resistant sorghum using genome editing. There are very good examples in this country and in my country in Kenya, where genome editing has been used with very good results on fighting maize-lethal necrosis. So Africa, of all the people, should be very receptive of this technology.
So we have some cases where this technology has started to be used.
Correct. There's very good examples in Kenya. There's very good examples in South Africa. There's very good examples in Egypt for wheat, cassava, and and these are very specific problems that inflict Africa that genome editing will solve with no adverse effects.
That is extremely encouraging to hear that in Africa there are countries that have already started to apply this. So there is an understanding which is coming, but which need to be fast. Problems are many in terms of food insecurity, in terms of nutrition, in terms of poverty. I think we have no time to wait. What are some of the lessons we may have learned from GMO and the very long and complicated regulation system that can help us to ease the process in the adoption and use of genome editing?
For genetically modified organisms, as I was saying, they can have a gene from a different species. They can have new proteins. And those new proteins could be allergenic, but the regulators take care of checking that. But in order to check for that, there are very expensive studies to be made. The same for potential toxicity. So GMO foods that are in the market are safe because regulators have tested them. But that testing costs a lot of money that only big multinational companies can put. For genome editing, there is no new protein. So therefore, those tests are not necessary, and therefore the cost of deregulating or taking these crops to commercialization, if they are regulated correctly, then it's much lower. The menu of potential benefits for the farmer, even for the consumer, because we have been talking about disease resistance, but also many of gene-edited crops have better nutritional value. Less cyanide in cassava, less gluten in wheat for celiacs, less acrylamide in French potatoes. So foods that are safer to eat. That's also very important, and that's being developed by small biotech companies that also could flourish here in Africa. They don't need to have a big pocket, or even universities.
I was attending the conference on science, technology, and its application in agriculture. And one of the things they were talking about, which hinders the adoption of science and technology in agriculture in Africa, was the regulatory systems. Could you summarize the regulatory landscape in Africa for biotechnology product, like GMO? And then we will draw some lessons on what we can do for gene regulation or gene editing. But that will be another question soon, because I have curiosity to understand how we can learn still from all this. What is the landscape?
So very superficially, the landscape for genome editing is Kenya and Nigeria are leading the pack. But I should also say that Africans work in a camaraderie kind of way. So there's association with Kenya. So there's reason to believe that the blocks that we have in Africa will create harmonization for policies, I believe, that would be harmonized within individual blocks. I believe that what happened in Nigeria informed what happened in Kenya, and I have very good reasons to believe that we will pull Ethiopia from Kenya perspective to the camaraderie. And I believe that Nigeria, I mean, this is very ambitious thinking of me, but I believe Ghana is a very close candidate for regulation.
Martin, from your experience and projecting all this in the future, when still in that conference they were discussing about regulation on gene editing, they said, okay, already at the starting, there is like a sort of confusion on GMO products and gene editing products. Don't you think that will make it difficult for regulation of gene editing technology and product to be consumed in Africa, because it will inherit the same complications that GMO are going through?
No, because when the issue is understood, when the regulator, the policymaker can study the issue and learn about it, they can clearly differentiate what is a GMO and a genome-edited product. And then, importantly, the policymaker, the government, the regulators must speak to society and say, look, we have this other technology now in our table. It's like, this technology is like this, and therefore we are regulating it like that. And it's different from this other technology that is being regulated differently. We in Argentina did that. The government not only worked on having a functional regulation, also started to speak with the public. The regulator and the Minister of Science will speak alternatively and say, this is genome editing, this is what we are using it for. Argentine scientists, Argentine companies are developing products for agriculture, also for health. And then the regulator said, we are going to control it like this and that. And when things are clearly explained to the public understand. And also they sympathize with the developments when they have a national origin.
Mm-hmm. I see here two major things. You talked about understanding. It means the flow of information to different stakeholders. And you talked about when the public understands. So actually, you really develop a campaign to get the information to everyone, because if you are not a developer, you are a user, a farmer. If you are not a farmer or a developer, you are a consumer, and you have a connection with this. So the public need to be aware of this. What are the key things that we need to pay attention to as we bring genome editing to our countries in Africa?
Don't say that this is the technology that you need. And then secondly, also, don't oversell the technology. Don't say that this will solve all your agricultural problems. I think it's very important to be honest and communicate very effectively and involve everybody at the inception. So what we have done is to have a very good communication strategy and just have communication living from one center and very moderated, because I think one of the mistakes we did earlier for genetic modification was to chest thump and to not communicate effectively.
So communication, and get the information.
And very effective communication, and also, listening to people. You'll be surprised, Canisius. Farmers too have a story, and if you sit down with them, I keep referring to Mama Winja because this is a lady in Ahero that I go to visit every time I go to do my field trials. She has a story. She tells me a long time ago we didn't have striga, so why did it come here and why is it there? And when I do this, so I mean we have that conversation. She's quite elderly now, but I think it's very good to respect farmers. I think it's very good to not just thump. I think it's very important to tell them what you're bringing to them and work with them every step of the way.
Martin, I'm always very interested by the trajectory that Argentina took in GMO already, and now you have been teaching genome editing for the last 15 years. You are in, and it is being applied. Can you share just an overview of how far you are in applying this technology at the grassroots level, and what are the success factors that made it possible in Argentina when we are struggling with all those controversies, those skepticism? The world works the same way. Why you are faster and we are still very much struggling?
Well, when Argentina began with the regulation of biotech crops in the early 90s, our leaders, our politicians, and our regulators, they didn't just repeat what somebody else was saying in Europe or in another continent or in North America. They analyzed the issue by themselves. They analyzed the potential benefits for the agriculture, the safety of the technology. They did their own assessment. Of course, they hear what other countries were saying, but they did their own assessment. They didn't just rely blindly on whatever other country was doing. And because Argentina chose to do their own, to take their own assessment and their own decisions, we decided to adopt these technologies, beginning with the biotech crops, genetically modified crops first. And then when genome editing appeared, it appeared a long time ago, but I mean in terms of potential use, in commercial use, about 10 years ago, Argentina didn't wait for Europe or United States or some other country to do something and then do the same or repeat like a parrot. We decided to analyze the issue by ourselves. Argentina was the first country in the world that developed a way of discriminating which genome editing technologies can be considered the same as a natural mutation and be registered as any new variety, any conventional new variety. We were the first one in the year 2015. And from there, many other countries in our region are doing the same as Argentina, and spontaneously or looking at our example, other countries in the world are doing that too. That's the important thing.
Very good.
For ourselves.
Gene editing is not new. Gene editing is being applied. People are reaping the benefits from it in other continents. Africa has just started to regulate on it and developing those technologies. Let's take a break. And when we come, let's look at the capacity that we have or what we need to develop so that we harness all the full potential of that technology.